Here's the thing, I love platform fighters. I love everything about them. But why? What makes platform fighters so interesting to me, as a person who never grew up playing traditional fighters? I had this thought when I was talking to some friends about fighting games, where they preferred traditional fighters while I preferred platform fighters. Platform fighters such as Super Smash Bros. And Rivals of Victor are some of my favorite games of all time. It's what really got me into the fighting game community in the first place. But when I was a kid, I never had any interest in playing traditional fighters such as Street Fighter, Tekken, or Marvel vs. Capcom, so I was never really in the FGC. However, this all changed when I started playing Super Smash Bros. Competitively. Like most people, I played these games a lot casually when I was younger with my friends and family. But like a lot of other people, I was actually introduced to the competitive Smash scene and I was absolutely hooked. I loved the freedom you had as a player and the fluidity of the movement and combo system. Combos aren't simply memorizing and executing long strings of buttons, but they were more dependent on your creativity and fast thinking as a player. Because of this, every player had a unique playstyle which made it way more entertaining for me to watch, at least in the competitive scene. For example, one player's Falco combo would be completely different than another because of how different and unique every match and situation is in a platform fighting game. Combos relied on mix-ups, DI, the percent system, and our movement options, which is what made watching a combo from a professional so exciting and entertaining. But it wasn't just watching the game, playing it was just as fun and exciting. Once you learn to really control your character in your own way, you can really play in such a creative and unique style that fits you, which is something I personally never felt when I played traditional fighters. Now I'm not trying to bash or discredit traditional fighters, because watching a highly skilled Street Fighter player completely outplay their opponent and show that they truly mastered the character can be incredibly entertaining as a spectator. I also love watching many of the other fighters at large tournaments such as EVO, but the thing is I don't really enjoy playing them that much. For me, platform fighters take the best aspect from traditional fighters and combine them with the free and unrestricted movement options of a platforming game. They have mind games and mix-ups in the rock, paper, scissors way that fighting games do, which allows the better player to read their opponent and be the better player. Although platform fighting games do have their fair share of differences such as the edge guarding, platforms, and the percent system, at a high enough level they do share many core features of a fighting game in common, which is why I hate when people consider Smash Bros. Not a real competitive game. The main draw for platform fighting games for me is the fluidity and creativity in your combos that just makes it so fun and rewarding to play and learn. Similarly to traditional fighters, the better you get, the more ways you can absolutely destroy a worse opponent, because fighting games give you the ability for the better player to absolutely outplay their opponent. Personally, I enjoy competitive games that let the better player be the better player. And Smash Bros. Was really the first game I'd classify as a platform fighting game, and it's what really got me into the FGC. It set an amazing standard for the genre as a whole, and redefined what a fighting game is with its unique percent system and platforming aspects. This system worked so well it inspired future platform fighting games such as Rivals of Aether and Brawlhalla. And I know there's plenty of people out there who only prefer one platform fighter such as Melee or Smash 4, and I personally have my own preferences, but I also just love the genre in general. But with all these great things about platform fighters, there are still a lot of problems with the genre that prevent it from growing. One of the bigger issues for platform fighters is really getting public recognition for the genre, as many people don't know the difference between a platform fighter and a normal fighting game. Not only that, but platform fighting games such as Smash Bros. Are often not even treated as a serious fighting game from people outside of the community, and even from some people in the FGC. And this is probably because Smash wasn't marketed as a competitive fighter. This isn't an easy issue to work on, but the main reason for this comes down to the fact that Smash Bros. Was just not intended to be a competitive fighting game at first. Because Smash was intended to be a party game, a lot of people who don't play Smash competitively only saw it as such, a party game, and don't really take platform fighters too seriously. This really hurts the genre as a whole, but luckily it's gotten better in the past few years with bigger sponsorships and larger tournaments. This also leads me to another issue with the genre, which is getting new players into platform fighting games. This issue mainly stems from the fact that the biggest game in the series, Super Smash Bros., is pretty hard to get into competitively. Going from a casual who mashes buttons and plays with items to a competitive Smash player who can read and outplay their opponent is a pretty big jump. There's a few reasons for that, but one of the biggest is the lack of support from Nintendo. Nintendo did not make Smash Bros. With the intention of being a highly competitive fighting game. They made it to be a party game. Thankfully though, Nintendo was sort of embracing the whole esports thing and competitive gaming as a whole, and with the addition of balance patches and for glory to Smash 4, it does help new players get into smashing at least a little bit better. But for games like Melee, it's very hard to get into because of its high skill ceiling and skill gap. Melee is an incredible game, but it's also an incredibly difficult and punishing game for new players. And people who aren't familiar with competitive platform fighters are definitely going to have an incredibly hard time finding fun when you repeatedly get forced knocked without even knowing what you're doing. Although I'm not saying Melee needs to be easier because the skill required to play it is a big draw to the game itself. My main point is that it's harder for new players to really get into since it's such a difficult game. Luckily, things like Anther's Ladder are a step in the right direction, with its own ranking system allowing people to play it around their skill level. However, even the worst players there are still miles ahead of a brand new player. This whole problem of getting new players into platform fighters is the thing that I think Brawlhalla actually covers very well. When I was trying to get my friends to start playing Smash, they weren't really into it. When I showed them Brawlhalla, they really seemed to enjoy it. And that's because Brawlhalla is very welcoming to new players to platform fighters. One of the biggest reasons for this is that it's free to play. Most people who haven't played a platform fighter aren't about to drop upwards to $60 to buy a new one. And free-to-play games tend to have a pretty big player base, so there's plenty of players who are also learning the game to play against. Another thing about Brawlhalla that makes it so appealing to new players is the ability to play casually with your friends. Brawlhalla has a ton of casual and fun game modes you can play with up to 7 of your friends with. This is something that a game like Rivals of Aether doesn't do, since it only has competitive rule sets for online, which don't get me wrong, it's great for competitive players and I still love playing Rivals of Aether online, but it's not the best for newer casual players. On top of that, Brawlhalla has a more simplified gameplay. With their weapon system, removal of special abilities, and 3 jumps for easier recovery, it's much easier for a new player to learn the mechanics of. Brawlhalla also has an easy to get into built-in rank system where you can even play 2v2 ranked with a friend, as well as a ton of new player-friendly features. Now this is great and all, but it also leads me to my main problem with Brawlhalla, which is depth. To any Smash players who have already played Brawlhalla, they probably know what I'm talking about. Brawlhalla is an easier game to pick up, but has a much smaller skill ceiling compared to a game like Melee. Now, not to say that there isn't any strategy or advanced tech in Brawlhalla, and there is quite a difference from a skilled Brawlhalla player and a new player, but it is lacking in depth, which I think might turn away veteran players from the game. This is why I think Brawlhalla is an amazing gateway for new players in the platform fighting genre. If you enjoy Brawlhalla, you will also likely enjoy Melee, Smash 4, or even Rivals of Aether, and you won't be as overwhelmed when you start playing it. And on top of that, with the addition of more and more platform fighting games such as Brawlout and the eventual Icons Combat Arena, we will likely begin to see an even bigger growth in the platform fighting genre. These games have such a dedicated fanbase to their games and even the genre as a whole, as we've seen from fan-made games such as SSF2 and Crusade, as well as mods such as Project M and Brawl Minus. And most of the people who are making these platform fighting games are people who loved Smash Bros. And are heavily inspired by it. And sometimes they even get compared to Smash or called Smash clones, and to be fair, some games do have more similarities than others, but platform fighting games have really become their own genre as a whole. Platform fighters are just an experience I don't get from any other video game. It combines strategy, mind games, mix-ups from a fighting game with the freedom, creativity, and style of a platform fighting game into an experience unlike anything else. That's why I love platform fighters, and I just can't wait to play the next generation of platform fighters.